he asked me to.
Okay, thank you, everyone. We are now back in session after our executive session to consider to get advice from council on the previous agenda item, which was the complaint filed by the Keahole Point Hatcheries LLC. We will now be moving to the financial report for approval and decision making. Riley?
Sure.
Okay.
If you could put up the presentation, please, Austin. So briefly, our financial report, we've pretty much been in line with what we have been doing for the last 5 years or so. When you look at the graphs on revenues and expenses, but we do have a little bit more in the way of expenses in the past 2 months. And at the last board meeting, I had warned everybody. So in principle, you're not too surprised this time around. That said, so on the revenue side, we are at, and so this is looking at the full fiscal year until the end of April. So we're only 2 months away from the end of our fiscal year, which ends in June. So looking at July through April, total revenue was 4.4 million, thereabouts. That does reflect a 3.7% increase overall. The main reason for the increase is the increased seawater system. Oh, I'm sorry, are you?
I know, I apologize. I just there, okay.
I hadn't realized people weren't seeing.
Okay, sorry.
Seeing the graph or the table. So this first table is the NELHA revenue July through April.
Oops. Yeah.
And so basically we had a higher seawater system revenue, and that's because of companies like Captura and Mackay Ocean Engineering that are utilizing a bit more seawater than we had compared to last year. So there was an increase of about 6.6%. Or 82,000 on the seawater revenue side. And of course, that's going to be offset by pretty much equivalent expenses. Our research campus outdoor space, that also increased a little bit by 39,000. And again, mainly due to Captura, which is that company is leasing a significant portion of our Mackay North end of the campus. It's a corner right outside of Pam's lab. She gets to see him every day. Percent reports were due by March, and this year we did get what looks like a significant increase in percentage, but is just a 47,000 total in terms of dollar amounts. But there was an increase in percent rent this year. Our labor services remain down a little bit, and again, that's still due to that Department of Health contract, which has pretty much went away, I think, or reduced drastically, if I understood correctly. And our electric reimbursements well, basically utility reimbursements, that was, I believe, offset. Electric reimbursements were about flat, but the freshwater reimbursements did increase. So these reimbursements are basically what the tenants are utilizing, and so we bill them and they reimburse us. So if you're seeing an increase in freshwater, for example, that means that the tenant is utilizing more freshwater. Next slide, please. Any questions on revenue at this point? I'll take that as a no, and we'll go to expenditures. This graph is just simply showing you, so the gray line is fiscal year 25. We're pretty much on top of all the other lines with a slight increase in revenue in the last few months, in part due to the percent rent. If we could go to the next slide, which is all the expenditures. Now this was of course included in your board packet. I don't know if anybody was able to go through all the details, but we did have a minor typo. It's only affecting 2 cells, and they're shown in red, sort of in the middle of the page at the top. I think we had a decrease of 22% there, and that's because we were missing 2 months expenditures under the personnel services. So that really has been flat, not a drastic decrease of 22%. So your board packet and the reality is a little different, and we're revising that now. But overall, our total expenses is 4.1 million, and that is a 5.2 increase over the last fiscal year. Again, seawater expenditures were increased due to increased seawater demand and dispensation. Total tenant utilities of those increased as well, and that's mainly due to higher freshwater use. NELHA electrical usage, that is tied to our seawater again, also increased. We have also had increased environmental monitoring expenses, and you heard a little bit about some of those costs when Pam explained how we're doing more baseline data gathering on the seawater system. So that did increase by 10.2%. Our beach park maintenance, we continue to have a really heavy use, although I think it's decreased a little bit, but we do put a lot of our staff effort and time and supplies. And so that is 32% over what we were, what it was costing us last year. So all of those extra expenses have taken, put Post Park ground maintenance in general on the back burner. I don't know if that's fair to say, Keith, but expenses there have decreased sort of as a consequence of putting more time on the beach park. Admin expenses, they've increased approximately 9.1%. And that's in part due to the increases, union mandated increases, and also we have now filled in positions. So about 8 months ago, we were at 12 staff members, and we've filled the positions now. I think we're only one staff person short. Any questions on the expenses at this time?
Not a question, but thank you for the work on the beach park maintenance. Given the nexus to community, I think that's super important, but we do have to balance it out.
Yeah, thank you. Next slide will be our special fund. Oh, that's just a graph, again, in line. And if we could go to the next slide and show the special fund balance. So this is a part I had warned you a little bit. The last few financial reports, we were able to show a special fund that was at about $1 million. And if you'll recall, we got board approval to spend about $250,000 on removal of Ka'u pipeline. That poses a little bit of a safety hazard offshore. And so we've executed a contract after board approval, and I believe they were scheduled last week and it got pushed to this week. They're in the process right now. So they're staging their hyperbaric chamber up at one of our facilities. And so this is literally happening as we speak. And will be a relief to know that that is removed. So that's one of our large expenses there. And the other large expense is around March, we typically will have our security contract that gets taken out of our special fund and encumbered. And that tends to cause a depression around this time. So end of the story here is that special fund is now at 776,000 approximately. And then finally, the arrears report, unless there are questions on the special fund balance? No? So perhaps we go to the last arrears report, and as usual, we update the arrears report as per the day of. And so if we could do that, Faustine, and go to the next. So this is the one you got in your board packet. If you could go to the next slide, which is as of today. There is improvement on the bottom line, but more importantly, some of the higher numbers we have a plan on addressing. So apparent checks in the mail, I do believe them every time they say that, it does end up coming through. So that one will be down shortly. Ocean Era, thank you, Neil. I think Neil and Riley are working on a payment plan. Yes, I guess I should say thank you, Riley.
Oh, we got more efficient carrier pigeons to carry the check to us.
But there was a payment by 13,000 since last week, so that is also reflected on this graph. And finally, the third largest, the other large one on this table was Symbrosia. As you saw, they had an agenda item today. We thought we had all the i's dotted to present, but we weren't quite there. So we're asking to defer that, but it is something that we are working on. And that's the summary on the financial report.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Could we please get a motion to approve the financial report?
So moved.
Can we get a second, please?
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Okay, is anyone opposed to approving the motion? Okay, hearing no objection, the motion is hereby approved. Next, we will have the executive director's report.
So I'd like to start with the legislative session, which completed the most. There's one bill in particular that would be impactful to NELHA and Kona and Keauhou aquifer as a whole. There's Senate Bill 1602 was passed. It's to construct and build monitoring wells, 2 wells in the Keauhou aquifer. The location has not been determined. There was 4 million in CIP in money designated to DLNR to actually administer, facilitate, along with, so you build the well, right? But the good news is that they provided $200,000 annually to fund the monitoring of those wells. So that's the highlight of the legislative session as related to water quality aquifers in this area. Now, I know Keith had mentioned earlier about the microgrid and on the original campus and looking at the electricity profile. So I've been looking at, you know, the HNEI report that was conducted about 4 years ago, and that was inclusive of the electrical infrastructure under, specifically under NELHA's or the state's control. And the analysis was performed according to that data set. And what I'm looking at is working with the utility, the tenants, to actually have a more comprehensive load profile analysis of the entire campus. So it includes close to 30 transformers versus the 5 that was included in HNEI. And that would give us, with the current set of tenants and their profile and their use, a good sense of what would be needed to be generated to offset that load at the time of day that that load is being requested or needed by the tenants. In addition, it would give us a sense of what sustainable energy storage would be needed and in what form and in what cost. So I'm working on with the utility to do that and that type of analysis. We will need the approval from each of the tenants to share their load data, their meter data, in order to actually complete this. And but I think the upside of an analysis like this, I'm moving forward with a project to ensure that NELHA 870 acres can perform as a microgrid and have the sustainability and resiliency for an extended period of outage to ensure that our plants and animals stay alive and that we can minimize the impact. The master plan and EIS, we were attempting to, with the pig, you know, make, I guess, adjustments and to the scope and for the onshore and offshore. The we're kind of pushing that forward quickly with the understanding that the funding for the offshore EIS needed to be encumbered by the end of June. And just yesterday, working with the budget and finance team, we found out that the encumbrance deadline is 2026 June. So that allows us, it allows us to actually work with the PIG and formulate the plan for the master plan and EIS. So, without rushing and actually moving forward with a better plan, I guess. So with the Ota well, which is something that's been going on for those new on the board for 14 years,
Since at least 2016 that I'm aware of.
9 years. And yeah, so there's we're looking at taking the position of moving forward with Ota well, having that permit approved with the condition and compliance with whatever the findings of the adaptive management plan, which is currently being looked at, kicked off with Seaworm and with the community members to come up with a freshwater management plan that is inclusive of all parties from Maka to Makai. And that's still, still working on setting up the partnerships in order to have the agreement to have that well permit approved. And so that's an ongoing process, but we're looking at having a more collaborative approach with our community and to move forward with transparency and understanding of each other's concerns, needs, and finding the answers in order to move forward. Related to the work that we're doing with water quality, the infrastructure of NELHA, the uptime is an awesome performance. It is the backbone, I believe, of what sets NELHA aside as an environment to pursue what the tenants, our current profile of tenants pursue, because, and sometimes you forget that, but our staff is on call 24 hours a day to ensure that that 2 hours is met. And they have been performing that for 20 years. And the water quality is something more recent, but it also, in part, in looking at it, being kind of new to the picture, looking at our infrastructure, our pipelines, the valves, and these we just celebrated the 50-year anniversary. So there's 50 years of activity that now, boom, we have this infrastructure of pipelines that were adjusted many times. Like when Keith said, you have a 24-inch main coming down and a tenant leases a parcel, they stick in a lateral and it's there cooling on after that. Well, that has been going on for 50 years. And so what we need to do is the same way we need to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. We need to actually work on corrective, intentional upgrades or redesign of the piping system to it and update it. But that will take time. It will take a lot of money. But I believe we should set aside a reserve. Currently, the financials do not have a reserve. I don't have the exact number yet, but we need to realistically set aside funding on an ongoing basis in our financial systems, financial accounting, to address and provide for that corrective work within our pipeline system. Some of the, like the electrical work and pipelines, like where Nate is, it's a dead end road. That, you know, all the trees and plants are growing at the dead end road, and we gotta correct that and clean that out and make sure that we have a better delivery system of the water. And so rather than doing it, giving you a number of like, because the number is more like $30-40 million. But if we have an ongoing set aside based on the revenue and expense profile of the deep sea and surface seawater performance, and as we grow a tenant base, we can actually improve, even make further improvements. But I'll get, you know, a month or two, maybe at the next board meeting, propose some type of set aside and funding mechanism for ongoing maintenance of our infrastructure. And that concludes the report from the executive director.
Thank you, Riley. And just to clarify that the importance of continuing to improve the system is part of NELHA's continued work moving forward and working with tenants, right? To just continue to provide the quality and continue to work together to make this the best place we can.
Right, and you know, quality varies from tenant to tenant in some degree, but keeping the water flowing is a common thread with all of them.
Right. Okay, thank you. Board members, any questions for Riley on the executive director's report?
I have a question. In the updated master plan, have you guys already talked, or has the PIG talked about building a centralized sump system for flushing of the lines? Has that been a topic?
Not yet.
Will it be?
Can be.
Will it be?
Yes, it can be.
It can be now that it's been raised, Nate, but we're still in the early parts of it.
Okay, and I would have been happy to join the PIG, but like I said prior, my wife would have killed me if I joined one on more things. So anyways, just want to make sure it's on the table.
Thank you for raising it. Okay, any additional matters? Okay. Not seeing any hands. Thank you, board members, and all of our public participants. This has been a longer meeting than usual. We greatly appreciate your patience and your participation. Our next regularly scheduled board meeting will be on Tuesday, July 15th, 2025 at 1 p.m. With that, we'll say the meeting is hereby adjourned at 2:49 p.m. Thank you.